Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I'm going to chat with you guys a little bit about something that in a lot of ways is going to be in conflict with stuff I said years ago. This is the way that I train now, this is the way I coach my clients, and the results themselves are undeniable. People can argue all that they want that, well, Jason, okay, this is what you're doing now, but am I not dramatically stronger now at the age of 43 than I was even in my late 30s while doing powerlifting meets? Right? Okay. I'm stronger now on every single lift. Squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, everything. I'm stronger on everything. What's one of the big differences? Most of my training is geared towards hypertrophy. All right? Things work the other way around. We always say size equals strength. And there's a large amount of truth to that. But here's the thing. When I've given strength standards in the past, like years ago, I even gave my Big 5 strength standard. And I've said if you reach these numbers, right, I gave a Big 5 strength standard. I said if you can reach all 5 of these numbers, not 4 out of 5, not 3 out of 5, but all 5, that you, even if you're completely drug-free, you're going to look big and jacked top to bottom while walking down the street to the average person. Okay, people are going to know that you lift. And what were the numbers that I gave? 500 deadlift, 400 squat, 300 bench, 200 overhead press, and 100-pound pull-up or chin-up. And I threw that in because that controls body fat. It's real hard to do a pull-up with 100 pounds of weight if you're 25% body fat. Okay, it's super hard to do. You're at a healthy body fat, it's a lot easier to do if you got a strength base. And also your legs are going to weigh more because you can squat and deadlift. And I said that, and then the problem is that I think there's still a large degree of truth to that because people have gotten there and found out it's true, and we see it out there in the general public. Those guys always look like they lift who can do all those things. The problem is that I gave that standard, and what do I see tons of people do? Oh, I just work on really getting good at those 5 lifts. Well, here's the flaw in that. And this is something that I've had to come to terms with. Just lifting heavy is not going to maximize body composition, and it's not even going to maximize strength. Because I've even tried the most extreme version of that. I've run Bulgarian. What did I ultimately do? I went back to something I had done many years ago. I used to believe in the conjugate. Did it many years ago. Built a good base again, coming back to training, applying all those principles. And then I went into other things years ago. And did a lot of floundering, experimented with a lot of things, and I ultimately, well over a year ago, I finally said, you know what? The conjugate guys are right. This method works. It works for everyone if done correctly. Works for any training goal. And I went back to it. I've been doing it well over a year. So people say, oh, did you start this a year ago? Nope. Quite a bit further back. A year and a half. How much stronger and even more jacked am I now as a result of it? And I'm still at pretty similar body weights, a little heavier. Okay, a few pounds. So I'm clearly leaner too then. What's one of the big changes though with all of it? I do tons of hypertrophy type training. No, I don't believe there's a hypertrophy rep range because a lot of my hypertrophy training is outside of the hypertrophy range, is higher. I do a lot of work in the 10 to 20, not the 8 to 12, the 10 to 20. In fact, I do everything in that range other than my even higher rep stuff, my restoration stuff. Why? Because I already get the heavy work in. I max out every week. I have my lifters do this. I have lifters who start doing this and they start hitting PRs real quick. Because I coach most of my people on this system. In fact, if I have advanced lifters who aren't ready for conjugate yet and they start stalling with 5s, I'll add a bunch of 10s in. I'll take their benches over to 10s. I'll add a bunch of 10 and 12 rep lower body exercises if their squat is stalling at 5s. Start building more muscle. Okay. What builds muscle? Training volume. Quality volume, meaning training volume with quality sets, quality reps in which metabolic fatigue is achieved. In other words, doing work. Doing work. Having the muscles do work. You know, don't just mean flop around. The more work your muscles put in, as a general rule, and this is a very simplistic analogy, I understand that we're dealing with different things as far as muscle fiber recruitment and joint angle specificity. I understand all of that, but I'm putting it into simplest terms that as long as people don't get stupid, is true. Okay, as long as you don't try to take a really stupid extreme of this statement and take it to irrational extremes, it holds true. The more work your muscles do, the more growth you generally stimulate. And what's more work? 5 reps with 300 pounds or 20 reps with 200? How about doing a 3x5 with 300 pounds versus doing 3x20 with 300 pounds? You're going to do a lot more work on that other one. You're going to gain more muscle. A bigger muscle is a stronger muscle in isolation. Dealing with multi-joint movements, that's not always true because there's a lot of muscles involved and there's intramuscular coordination and all of these other factors, right? But when you're dealing with a muscle by itself, the more hypertrophy that you induce, the more force that muscle produces when you lock it into a machine and you test it. Like let's say you go onto a machine that can isolate the muscle, right? Because you can't move anything but that one joint. More hypertrophy you have in the muscle that moves that joint, or the most important muscle in it, meaning, you know, you can bend your arm and yes, there are other muscles besides the bicep involved, but the bicep is the most important one, right? You guys understand what I'm saying there. Whatever most muscle is most responsible for that movement, the bigger it is, the more force it is capable of producing when you test the force that it produces for an all-out exertion. It is directly correlated with the amount of muscle you've gained in it. In other words, hypertrophy equals higher force production when you attempt to move as much force as possible. In this case, would generally be with a 1 rep max. It could also be how fast can you move a given weight. That's force production too. That can be measured, but poundages is easier to measure, just total weight. It's easier to measure. Less equipment required. Bigger muscle has more strength. Now, when we talk about multi-joint movements, a bigger muscle has more strength potential. Okay? That being said, we know that the more muscle you can stack on, the stronger you're going to be. But you're going to need to stack it on all the muscles involved, right? You're not only going to have to get the primary movers, you got to look into stabilizers. You guys know that your biceps actually are a stabilizer for the bench press? People say things like, oh, stabilizer muscles, without realizing they all have names. I'll name one of the bench press stabilizer muscles, the bicep. That's one. The posterior deltoids are a stabilizer on the bench press. See, we can name those stabilizers. We don't need to use ambiguous terms. Well, the bigger your stabilizers are, the stronger you're going to be. What about certain weaklings causing injury? So right there, I'm training hamstrings. Weak hamstrings lead to injuries on a lot of movements. Why are hamstrings weak? Because they're underdeveloped. Well, what do we mean when a muscle is weak? We mean it hasn't been developed effectively. We haven't made it grow big enough. Because a movement pattern is not a muscle. We're not worried about biomechanics. We're not worried about the neural efficiency. When we say that we have a weak muscle, we mean that we have a small muscle. If your triceps are weak on your bench press, they're too damn small. You need to make them bigger. And you need to make the heads of the tricep bigger that translate to the bench press the most. Okay. Hypertrophy training, getting in and doing a bunch of volume, raises the ceiling on your strength potential dramatically. And if you do it right, it lowers your injury risks. And that's a whole nother topic. So this is something I've had to come to admit. And I think people forget that. They come to the channel and they look at really old stuff I've made years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and say, Jason, this seems to contradict. I'm like, yes, it does. But I've been saying this stuff for a long time now, and I've admitted I got it wrong. I changed my personal philosophy, and I've been displaying it every day for well over a year. I coach my clients the same way, and they get great results. Okay? But I've had to admit I was wrong about that. We need large amounts of training volume to maximize our strength. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.